that you turn to, someone you can rely on, closer each day, home and away.
Welcome to Home and Away, a Tottenham Hotspur podcast hosted by myself, Graham Spice, and Glenn Cowie, where we discuss all things Tottenham Hotspur with both the match attending and international supporters view. Glenn, are you good?
Yeah, mate. Really good. We were just discussing, I'm not in my budgie smugglers any longer. I've been for my cold dip and workout this morning. Contrary to belief, it does get cold in Australia. It is currently 9 degrees Celsius, so it's a bit of a chilly one out there. But yeah, I'm good, mate. Broadly okay.
I'm not going to feel sorry for you because most of the year you tell us how hot it is, so
No.
tough shit.
Yeah, we've got a few months of this. Your summer will be our shitty weather. But yeah, broadly I'm pretty well. The season is over. We'll get into that in a moment. But importantly, we've got two guests today. So we've got Jan all the way. So Jan, your last name is pronounced Juhlin?
Yeah, almost. I can live with that. Yeah.
I got close enough.
Yeah.
And welcome, Jan. You're from Sweden, but where exactly in Sweden are you, mate?
In Gothenburg, the fine city on the west coast of Sweden.
And then our second guest for your second appearance, it's Jeremy Oster from Denver. How are you, Jeremy? You doing well, mate?
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I was in a foul mood coming into this podcast, but as soon as I sat down, it's like, okay, good. That stuff's all over. This is all good stuff now. Well, Tottenham anyway. So at least it's something I like. That's a PG. So all
we
good.
pulled you away from something that's not so great, maybe, to something you enjoy. And well, we say you enjoy. There's been a fair bit of news with Spurs recently, and we don't know what's going to be ahead. But before we get to that, maybe back to you, Jan. We always like to do this. I don't know whether you picked Tottenham, whether Tottenham picked you, or if you didn't have a choice, like maybe Jeremy'd have a sort of choice, but then we know his story from his previous episode he came on. But Jan, why Spurs, mate? And any memories that stick out for you, and any games or goals or something that you're like, oh yeah, amazing. That's what it's about to be a Spurs fan.
Well, first of all, I started supporting them back in 78. So I was 7 years old, and all my friends, they supported Liverpool, all of them. Bob Paisley era and everything. And for a Swede, 7-year-old, Tottenham sounds kind of funny. So I took to that, and I asked my daddy to write to Tottenham and ask for a scarf and a cap. And we did that, and they actually sent it without any payment.
Wow.
So as I said, getting 7-year-old and getting that, of course, that's the first love. I was thinking about like the first memory of a game. It's easy, history distorts your memory, but I think the FA Cup final 81 probably. It was televised here in Sweden as well, so it was a big thing. 10-year-old. That's when you sort of really start getting some of the memories back. And during the 80s and 90s, I went a lot to Tottenham, mainly during the 90s. I missed my flight home when Alan Nielsen scored the winner at Wembley because I stayed too long. So. But yeah, and then after that, I was the chairman of the Swedish Supporters Club. But these days, I just induce the hell of Tottenham into my sons instead.
So what's a typical viewing experience for someone based in Gothenburg? Like, do you get all the games live? Like, I know that obviously Jeremy in Denver, myself in Australia, we have access to all of them live because there's no blackout. Is that similar for Sweden? And then do you watch at home, or do you have a group you go to the pub with?
You can basically watch every game here in Sweden, and I usually do it at home because I'm not a big fan of noisy surroundings, basically. So I try to stay away from.
Yeah. When we're at the stadium, how'd you cope with that? Because that's pretty.
It's a different thing. You go for the atmosphere there. On the pub as well, you get to sit around sadly there are a lot of negative people around.
You should sit in the stadium this season.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It weren't much different, and most of them were probably as drunk as the people in the bars as well.
Yeah. Oh, usually it's I sit at home, and maybe my sons are with me as well. So
I'm quite interested. How at the time you were looking after it, how big was the supporters club?
We started it. And when I left, we were 1,000.
Wow, it's big. So I think the Norway one was bigger, but then that's more recent. Maybe it's grown over those years. But I think there was about, when I spoke to them, it was about 1,600.
Mm.
But so it's they're by far, when we've had people on from all over the world, that by far the biggest supporters clubs that we've had people on from, and interestingly, because of the proximity and the relatively cheap flights, far more people come regularly to matches from both Sweden and Norway, I found, than a lot of the other countries that we've had people on for. It's because I guess it's not an expensive weekend, but
No,
but
of course
it's
not.
relatively inexpensive if you consider buying a Tottenham ticket ever inexpensive. But yeah, interesting.
And we can get into this a little bit. I'll come to you in a moment, Jeremy. Before I do, Jan, a Swedish player we have, of course, Lucas Bergvall. I may not be pronouncing that correctly. So I'm
Brilliant.
I'm almost 100% sure you're not.
That was actually good. That was good.
yeah.
Amazing. Stand corrected.
But from memory serves, when we were messaging prior, you're involved in football somewhere, right? And is it not so much scouting, but there's a bridge that you gap. There's a gap that you bridge in terms of some kind of development with younger players. So Lucas Bergvall, his journey, did you know of him in terms of before he became who he is today, and obviously a regular name on the team sheet? Was he always expected to do good things and big things out of Sweden?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the shining stars. My job is basically working with kids and youth teams at a grassroots level. Bo was really a shining star in the Brommapojkarna, who's of course one of the biggest academies in Sweden. And Kulusevski is also a Brommapojkarna guy, so it's a lot of players stem from there. But their philosophy is so, but that's a totally different topic, I'd say. A lot of kids that really don't get the chance. But yeah, Lucas and his brother were always shining stars.
Yeah. So his brother's younger.
Yeah.
Okay, so being another Bergvall. Yeah. Okay, maybe we could have a sort of Bellingham brothers.
We can have an entire squad made up of Greys and Bergvall.
Okay. Yeah. We hope. Well, look, as I mentioned, I'm keen, Graham, for you to come in as well. But given we've got the two guests, I want to give them as much airtime as possible. Jeremy, pivoting to you, mate. Let's get into it. The season as a whole, maybe some views. And Graham, your note was after the Lord Mayor's show. There's been a few things that have happened, but before we get to that, Jeremy, you tend to be a pretty balanced Spurs fan. You don't tend to jump one way or other. But how did you see it, mate? The season as a whole, and rescued at the death by the Europa League win and a bit of a chance for a reset. How did you view things, mate?
Well, I think, I think Ange for sure was rescued right at the end. No doubt about that. He'd have been gone, and he may still be gone. We don't know. But how did I view it? When I looked back and I looked at some of the highlights of the season, we played some bloody good football early on, didn't we? I mean, with some great performances. Villa, Newcastle. There was a lot of great performances. The first half of Brighton, not the second half so much. But we were looking really good. We do have a bloody good team. And what I loved is that, or what I felt, and not everyone felt this way, is that Ange could see with the injuries that happened, we were compromised. And I'm not going to talk about focusing on the Europa League. We all know that. But what I loved is that he kept his commitment to the squad. This is the way we're going to play. He knew, and in my opinion, he feels that there is more value to potentially losing ground this season and instilling certain beliefs into the players for the future seasons so that they understand the mentality, which is what it's all about. And that's what he's trying to shift and change. So I don't think he ever came into this to say this is a disaster of a season. He just saw it as there are different opportunities to learn here and grow perhaps quicker. And I think people like Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, they had the chance to grow quicker than they would have done. So there are definite benefits. But I was never worried about, as long as we didn't get relegated, I was never too worried about it. I'm more worried about where we are in the future. And really, we've got to stick with the plan. It doesn't matter if the plan's not going well now. All that matters is, does the plan end with what we want? That's my opinion on it.
I wouldn't disagree too much with that. And it was akin to when you, and maybe you'd have a view on this, when you're training a group of kids, the basics on football, and they might lose the game 20-0, but if they do the basics really well, like they manage to keep the ball and they manage to form triangles and they manage to do the things you're actually instilling in them, you say, well done, you did the basics. So I think that's a strange analogy. I appreciate that, but I understand what you're saying there, Jeremy. Graham, mate,
But I tell you what, and the analogy continues to work, right? I coached at youth teams that have lost 10-0, 20-0, and the kids are fine. That they will keep turning up every week. The thing you have to worry about is the parents. And in our analogy, the parents are the supporters, right?
yeah.
They're the ones paying for them to come. So, and that's always the issue. I think that it's patience, right? Who's got the patience for that? Yeah, sorry.
But and Graham, I've been keen to get you've been supporting Spurs a bloody long time, like we all have. I mean, Jan 78, Jeremy probably around then. Me since probably my early.
Probably almost exactly aligned with Jan.
Yeah,
I think I went to my first game in 78.
and
my first shirt was the 78.
What with the massive
white
collar?
And it's itchy as hell. That it was like made from like recycled asbestos or something. It was awful to wear. So could that be the season we came back up from Division 2?
Yeah, correct.
And then although I did go to games with my grandfather, I remember first televised game I remember watching was the 81 Cup final as well. So similar. But in terms of this season's been weird though, right? I think but the end result completely. I don't really care about the rest. We've been so starved of trophies that winning a trophy this season for me made it a better season than all the seasons we had under Pochettino, where we got close but we didn't quite make it. Yes, the football was better to watch, better on the eye maybe, but we had a fairly decent squad then, and also didn't have as many. Although we did quite a lot of injuries under Poch as well, but not.
We always missed Kane for large.
Not like this season. No, this season has been like at one point we had 17 players out, and I guess January was a weird time, right? If he made that decision in January, that's quite interesting because in January we were still in fourth. We were still, apart from the league, which we could probably already see wasn't going to be a thing. We were in 3 cups still. So like to make a decision to prioritize one of them was quite a bold thing to do. And all I say is that for all of the problems we've had, and he's completely been justified in what he did. And if you like, if anyone embodies to dare is to do, it's him, right? So I'm fine if we as a club make a decision to go in a different direction. If they do that, then I think you really have to question the identity of the club. Because if that's not fully Tottenham, then I don't know what is anymore. And I would be very disappointed if he went now. Very disappointed.
Totally. I think he wanted to win us a trophy for sure. But to focus on Europa makes sense because it's the only one that comes with the reward of Champions League football. So you've got to get that ultimate goal either way. If you want to get the players and the money on, it was the only avenue that makes sense. But he also went for the Carabao Cup plenty. I mean, we got to the semi-final. And even the first leg, we gave that a bloody good go. But we came up against the best team in England. We were just unlucky. I think if we'd have played anybody else, we'd have probably.
I think people forget that we won the first game in that 2 legs, right? Was it Bergvall scored that goal? Yeah. So just that second 90 minutes I'd rather forget.
Well, Jan, I'll come to you in a moment. I'd be keen to get your view on the season as a whole. But for me, you talk about Pochettino and probably even managers that have preceded Pochettino, and we've done okay, like under Redknapp and all the rest of it. But I think I'd have to go back and look up where exactly we finished at times under Pochettino, or when we went out of certain cups under Pochettino, because I don't really remember. Will never.
We went out early, often.
Correct.
In the domestic.
This season under Ange Postecoglou, I'll never need to be reminded on what happened because we won a trophy.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Yeah.
I think we got to a couple of FA Cup semi-finals under Poch, didn't we? So
so we Chelsea won, lost using.
Yeah.
And it goes.
Now this was a big difference.
Correct. It goes a bit overlooked. Poch's first season when Jeremy and I were actually there, we got to a final with the League Cup and we lost.
We said that one as well.
Yeah, so we were very much the nearly men, and classic Spurs. We're not always no nearly men, but with been poor in the league. So I know what I would take. The feeling that finished second gave me, or being in a title race, or the feeling that beating Ajax away, fair, like amazing feelings. But I tell you what, beating United,
Nothing tops the win, though.
nothing tops it. I don't know, for those of you that has listened to the episode where Graham and Josh were at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and there were some sound bites towards the end. I mean, I'm bloody doing gardening outside listening to it, and I'm getting emotional listening to it. Like, that's the feeling that it's given us, all right. So you always bloody remember it. But Jan, your summary, mate, of the season as a whole, where do you sit on how things played out?
I mean, I echo Jeremy's sentiments when it comes to, I mean, the first half of the season was really good. We played some brilliant football, and stat-wise, it was really good as well, both defensively and in offense. But then December came and all the injuries came, and it sort of everything started going, well, totally wrong. So, and December and January is not a time where you want to have 17 players out. And I think
the games come thick and fast, right?
yeah, and I think it's interesting as well that, I mean, everyone's talking about handball, but in Europe we haven't played any handball, none whatsoever. We played
Some of
very
the
pragmatic.
antithesis of it. Yeah.
We played a very pragmatic football in a way that we wanted to win games. Whereas in the Premier League, I think he still wanted to play handball, but we all know that we didn't play with the same players there. So in the Premier League,
I think there's been a couple of games in the league where he's played that more pragmatic approach. Like, I think that Liverpool first game you're talking about, and I think even Man City, even at the end of last season, the Man City game that we lost 1-0 to stop Arsenal winning the league, that one as well. Everyone always says, "Oh, you just rolled over." We did not roll over. I tell you what,
We played well.
but again, it was a much more robust defensive display compared to what we would call handball, I guess.
Yeah.
He's got those strings to his bow. He can change it. I think with the degraded players that it's happened, it maybe should have happened more often this season. I feel like we were a bit gung ho when we didn't really have the defense to support that sometimes.
yeah, exactly. That's my point as well. That, I mean, when you look at it, the way we play with a high line, yeah, we do that if we got Van der Veer and Romero, but we are highly dependent on them. If we don't have them, then we play with our Davis and Danzo or whatnot. And
Archie Gray played, I think, about 35 games at centre back this season.
And that means that the team is stretched, which means that the opponents, of course, will find spaces in between the midfield and the attack. And you'll be punished. And that's what we've seen all the time.
I had some stats on that.
Oh, yeah?
So if you look at from the defensive perspective, when both Van der Ven and Romero play, we were averaging 1.84 points per game. When one of them starts only through injury or suspension, 1.28. And when both of them have been out, 0.85. So it's a massive difference, right, between having our first string defense available and not. That's really significant. So
remember as well, there was a period where we were missing some players, or even had some of them in, and then Betancourt was missing because he missed out 7 games through suspension.
Yeah.
That happened really late in the season as well, didn't it? Like, he did something in the summer, but then it was like November or something that he got sanctioned.
Yeah, right when we needed him. Right when we needed it. We could have coped one way or the other, but we couldn't cope without the central defense and without that. And actually, Basuma was terrible at that point. So we just didn't really have a connection in the midfield or the defense. And there's just no way your team could win that way. So no team can manage that.
Did you send me the grab? So if you take that 1.84, and of course, you never know how it's going to play out, but if you times that by 38, that's 69 points, right? In a season. So it tells its own story.
But I would argue, even if they are playing, you get the momentum and the rhythm, and then the team gets confidence. So that point total goes up. That's all we do.
That hardly ever happened this season, did it? And the other problem then became that when they even once they came back and they were getting up to match fitness, we were rotating constantly still. So actually, I think you can almost, February onwards, once we're out of the domestic cups, you can almost ignore all of the league results.
Yeah,
because we didn't play a full strength team at all in the league, I don't think, after that. Even the last game of the season, Romero had a toe injury, which I think must have dropped a bottle on it or something.
I I saw actual evidence of him drinking red wine out of the bottle on top of the bus. So,
That was Canada.
yeah. And look, moving towards that kind of chat in terms of this, the euphoria and the celebrations, and the one big takeaway I had, and I watched from start to finish, I wanted to soak it all in. I watched the whole parade. I watched obviously Ange's speech and Paul Coyte introducing the players, and it was phenomenal to witness this and saying, this is bloody Tottenham. What is going on? This is mad, like pinch me moment. But the big takeaway I had, the unity. There's clearly
Yeah,
a
squad unit.
unity there. And you know what? Sometimes you can take someone who isn't as tactically adept as maybe a Pep Guardiola, or maybe little intricacies of this game are quite up there. But when you've got that unity and that man management, I don't know if you picked up on it, but after he did his speech, which we'll get to in a sec, him and Romero, they embraced in this hug. And it's like, there's a connection there.
There's been a lot of positive noise coming out of Romero's social media accounts, I think.
My
since
theory
final.
is, if Levy, or maybe there's a new owner in the wings, we're going to talk about that. But if we bin off Ange, you're going to lose maybe the lots of Romero.
We could lose more players because of it.
And you're immediately losing that connection and that unity. It's gone. It's gone.
Okay. Do you know which players have vocally come out and said they believe in Ange? They want it in. Nadersol, Pedro Porro, Romero, Bergval, Gray, Van de Ven. I mean, these are the core players in our team. And remember, the media, this is a point I always want to make, the media, just remember a couple of months ago, they were all saying that Maddison is gone, he hates Ange, he can't wait for Ange to go. Do you remember that whole media thing?
Yeah.
It was clear that he...
when he was on the bench and they were trying to work out what he'd said.
Yeah, they were all saying that. So the media got all over that. There is a media bias, there's a media agenda, and the agenda generally of the media is to create controversy. And they did a good job of that. But clearly that's all wrong. That agenda was completely not there at all. He has got the dressing room 100%. And Levy has got to factor that in, surely. I mean, you want the players happy.
And my view on it as well, again, if it's Levy or if it's new ownership that comes in, whatever happens, if we are talking about a Thomas Frank or a Marco Silva as a replacement, then do it in October. Like, give Ange the start of the season. And if you know what, if it's shit house for the first 8 games, you can make that change then, because Thomas Frank and Silva are still going to be in those positions. That you could you pay enough money, you go and get them, right? If they're the options, don't do it now, because for me, they're same.
They're just, for me, anyone at that level with a smaller club who's basically really squeezing every bit of juice out of that team, it rarely works when they move to a bigger club, right? I mean,
Potter's an example.
Potter's a great example of that, right? Where he did wonders at Brighton, but then bigger team, more egos, more money to spend wisely / unwisely, and some of them just can't cope with that. And I don't think he has.
Moises is another example. Nuno even as well. I mean,
I really like Thomas Frank. I think he's done an amazing job at Brentford. I think again he has that kind of togetherness with the team. So it's not that I don't like him, but and maybe he could be successful. But for me, it's just as big a risk as just keeping Ange anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is that I was looking around today and thinking, what manager could do it better, and what is better? Is that to like end up in 4th place, not winning a trophy? Is that better? It's not better. No. So what are we looking at? De Zerbi? You don't know.
I think I saw that Inter Milan were interested in De Zerbi, but then I hear tonight that they've asked for permission from Como to speak to Fabregas.
Oh yeah.
So De Zerbi's he's an absolute nutter for starters, and also some questionable team selections at Marseille as well. Like it's like a rogues gallery, right?
Yeah. Well, and I've said to Graham, and it's more been like tongue in cheek, unlikely to ever happen.
You've come out with some far out stuff this season, like we're going to win the Europa League, and it happened. So listen, you can manifest this stuff. It's like if you want it, you're going to need to manifest it.
But my thing was, unless we all of a sudden are sold to Qatari money, which apparently is in the offing, if you listen into all the rumours, and they go and get Jurgen Klopp or something, then my landscape changes. Like, I think, okay, yes, unity, connection, all of that, I get all that, but it's Jurgen bloody Klopp. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, by the way. I don't think it will. I think
But it
probably
needs someone of a significantly higher level
that
that's to make it even worthwhile doing.
Yeah, correct. Correct. There is no point going to get Thomas Frank or Marco Silva because it's same. But if you say we're going to go and get Jurgen Klopp and we're paying him massive money and he's coming in, fine, okay, do it. We're going in the direction that I like.
Something I wanted to say as well, and Jan, and this is really for you. We're of a certain age, whereas we've watched Tottenham in the 70s and 80s, and at no point, I think probably 87 was the closest we came to get anywhere near. And I think we finished third in the league in 87, second or third. That was Pleat's team. But apart from that, we were never in any kind of way in competition for the league. There wasn't, I don't think that whole time, but we were a very successful cup team. So we could always string a row of cup games together and we won trophies. And actually, everyone was a lot happier. You get to go to Wembley, you get to parade the trophy, overtop bus parades, you get all of that stuff. And I think that I'd rather win something more frequently than really go chasing the league title, because I feel like even the gap in finances for the top clubs is big, and it's not, and actually the line is above us, not below us. So we're not a big club in terms of spending.
No.
Not, I'm saying we couldn't do the spending, but we will not spend.
Yeah, not under the
we won't.
Yeah.
We won't be paying 300 grand a week on salaries for the best players and paying over 100 million for those players. We're just never going to do that. It's not the model that the current owners have got. Maybe if from new owners the model changes, and if that's the case, then maybe we just need to be a great cup team again.
Didn't we finish quite high under LTEL, under Venables? I thought we came in second in
8990, and the reason I remember this is because I had on VHS the review of the season of 8990, and it was before the 1990 World Cup, and we had Lineker and Gascoigne. There's a great team. We finished third. That's 8990.
So I think that's about for that whole period. That's kind of that and 87, the two that I felt like we really had a run at it, but we fell short. But the rest of the time, oh Christ, we had some. Don't even want to talk about the 90s, and we won cups in the 90s, right? We won two cups.
Yeah.
So like even, and so this, I think this has been the longest streak of not winning something for like generations, and now we've broken that. I'd much rather, I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking, because even the cup competitions are competitive, right? And I'm not suggesting we throw away chances of a good finish in the Premier League every season, but I'm happy winning cups.
Without sounding an elitist fan, I think Tottenham Hotspur, with the manager, even if it's Ange that remains and he does the things he's been doing and prioritises cup runs and trophies, I still think the players we're going to attract and what we can achieve, we're always going to be top 8, right? I think. Now, this season, someone could tell, oh, no, you're not, you're 17th. But I think there was a bloody weird anomaly. You had what? Man United 15th. So, strange season, right? I don't know that we'll ever see Tottenham as low as that again. I hope we don't. But I think we're always going to be pushing that top 8. And if we're doing it with a cup run and a trophy along the way, fine. I'd take it. I'd absolutely take it. But I think moving on to this week, whilst we're still waiting to hear if Ange is retained. And by the way, I'll see if I can send it to all of you. I don't know if you'll be able to watch it without a VPN, but there was a 30-minute segment on ABC News here in Australia, which is pretty commonplace because Ange is from Melbourne. But it was called Australian Stories, and he was interviewed. He's on holiday right now, so it was like done in Greece, isn't he? Yeah, he's in Greece, and he was interviewed by ABC News. He's still being very vocal about the fact there's work to do. He wants to continue. There's no two ways about it. So he has spoken. Now the club are yet to speak, but is that because we're going through a change? We've had Donna Cullen. Well, it said step down. I've heard she was stood down. I'm I've met her once. She wasn't the warmest of individuals. I'll leave it at that. And then we've got rumours of Levy stepping down and an impending sale to Middle Eastern investors out of Qatar. Graham, what weight do you put in this? Is this just more Twitter nonsense, or do you think something's there, mate?
I think that there's a lot of change going on at the club. I think because the 1st of June, so Monday, the new CEO started, right?
No announcement, which was weird.
No, yeah, it was weird, right? Like they don't usually miss a chance to stick someone in front of a camera for social media, do they? And of course,
He's ex-Arsenal. He is ex-Arsenal, though. Just forget that.
but I think that the reason that they liked him was because he was really good at fan engagement. And if there's ever been a club that needs to improve the way it engages with its fans, it's Tottenham, right? So I thought it was a great opportunity for him to say, this is what I'm all about, or something. I don't know, but no, nothing at all. Definitely silence. I don't know if that's because half the club's away on holiday because it's probably the one time they get to have a break, or what. But even like the whole thing is like it seems to be up in the air. Like, all the rumors about Paratici coming back as director of football, nothing's materialized on that yet. I saw a story that he wants to bring. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he has a guy that he wants to bring in as a chief scout as well.
Yeah.
Well, he hasn't even been announced yet, and he's already picking his team. So I don't think there's any. No one's going to mourn her departure. I don't think. She's been a bit of a divisive character in the club, and I've seen some emails from her which were not very pleasant to support.
There was one I saw to the New York Spurs. He had like a death in the something happened, and he basically caused because the game was moved and he wasn't able to attend the game, and basically there was no help given.
Yeah.
Oh, pretty horrible. Very cold email back. Yeah.
I mean, I guess with Levy and Joe Lewis, if they were going to exit, now they're probably at the peak of what they're going to be able to generate in terms of revenue. Champions League football, just won a trophy. I suppose the league form is a bit of a downer, but if someone wanted to come in, and we know there's been suitors sniffing around the club, like Amanda Staveley and the Qataris have been talking to the club over the course of this season. They've been spotted, right, at games. So we know that they're talking. Initially, they were talking about a minority investment, but maybe things have changed. Maybe the Lewis family wants out. Maybe they want to move in a different direction.
It's his daughter, isn't it? It's Joe Lewis's daughter now who is across things. I said to my mate here, who I watched the final with, I messaged him and I said, I personally feel that there is truth to all of this. And I wonder if ink was still wet on any kind of deal pre-Europa League final. And now the fact we won it and there's Champions League football and we're a much more viable sale, then maybe that's why it's going to happen.
Negotiating.
Yeah. But Jan, Jeremy, what's your views, guys? Like Jan, maybe you first in terms of a sale. Are you in support of it if it was to happen? Are you a fan of Levy and how we've been run to date?
When it comes to the business part of it, I'm a fan of him. When it comes to the footballing department, not so much. And all the rumors about Qatar and everything, I think it pops up every summer, basically. I try not to listen too much to it. If it happens, it happens. And I'm still going to be there. We're still going to be there, whatever the owner is. I wouldn't be too keen having a club run by oil money, though. I must admit, that would be that would be a bad thing for me.
Yeah, not going to disagree with that. And Jeremy, without me naming names, but you've been fortunate enough to have a friend who was formerly on the board, and you've met Levy, I think, haven't you, at least once?
Yeah, about 3 times.
Yeah, and I've met him a couple of times, once in Perth, very briefly, got a picture of him, and once in San Jose. But I, as everybody's always known with me with Levy, I don't sit on this Levy out. He's horrible. He doesn't care. He just cares about money. I actually think he cares a bit too much, and he's got himself in a bit of trouble. He should have stepped away from the footballing side many years ago because he runs a business really well. But Jeremy, like your view on if Levy was to exit and new money came in, I mean, where do you sit on that, mate? As far as it's something that's never happened at Spurs, right? Where we've got maybe an owner that comes in and splashes big money.
Well, first thing I wonder is whether we need to sell at this point. We're so well set up. But if we were to sell a minority portion of the business and retain control, but take on investment, that could be a big chunk, a good few hundred million that could literally go straight into the players. And I think he's now got everything totally set up. He's bringing in the new CEO. He's restructuring the whole management side of it. And I think the only thing he knows that's missing is he wants that glory. He wants it. There's no doubt about it. Why wouldn't he? I mean, if you just want to call him a cold-hearted financial bastard, he wants it just to make more money on the club, okay? But the fact is, he is a Tottenham fan, and this is has been his life now. He's put everything into it. So I think it makes more sense just to bring in some serious investment that can help with the playing side of it. And you got to remember, we still owe about 700 million or so for the stadium build. So for him to bring in the investment now would help pay off that stadium, and we could manage that amount of debt. But imagine if that money was going onto the playing side instead, with the revenues we have, we would be able to compete at the very top. We don't have to sell out the club. And I would always prefer to keep it the way it is. I mean, look at Man United. They've been bounced around like a basketball with their ownership, and it hasn't really worked out for them. So you've got different, Liverpool's worked out fine for them, but you just don't know what you're going to get. You just don't know. So I would rather keep the structure, keep the focus, people who really know the club and have got a better focus. And what I like is they seem to be improving things. And you just look at the parade. I mean, do you think they'd have pulled off that level of a parade 3 years ago? They wouldn't have known what to even do if we won a trophy then. So the whole thing was incredible. And I think they're doing everything right at this point. And I think the trophy is going to give everybody this real mission to push on from here.
But my only worry about minority investment is that it will end up funding the hotel rather than the playing staff, because nothing would surprise me. And also building the women's training facilities. They're building at what was Whiteweb's golf club, and they're turning that into a completely separate training facilities for the women's team. So my worry is they're very, very quick to invest in infrastructure projects because it's an asset, right, on the books. But the playing staff has been more of a challenge. We still, I think the things going around this week that we were 260 million is still owed on players where we haven't completed the purchase yet. We're paying it over installments. So we still have outstanding money even on that. So it'd have to be quite a lot of money to move the needle, really, I think.
No, I think there's money there to be brought in and really do it. And in answer to that, Graham, I think, remember, to bring in infrastructure project investment, that's easy because you can borrow that from the bank. But to invest in players is a very different level of financing and borrowing. It's not the same kind of thing. So to obviously build the stadium, you can get financing for that. But to get someone to finance, purchasing 3 top players is a little different story. You've got to be able to pay the wages to go with it as well, which is our bigger problem, always has been, is the wages, really, more than anything.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Yeah, and so on that, great segue, actually, I think, on terms of lack of business. It's weird because the transfer window's open, but then it closes again, and this is all because of the Club World Cup, which I have a fundamental problem with, and for another episode. But Cunha's gone to Man United. They're talking to Mbeumo of Brentford. Arsenal are talking to the player from Real Sociedad. So there are clearly teams who
Chelsea have signed
Chelsea,
Delap.
Great deal for Chelsea.
So yeah. So we're looking at teams that we hope to be in and around, and we're in the Champions League with Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, no. But we're sitting on our thumbs, it looks like, but then we don't know what manager, so maybe that plays into it. But then there's rumours now of Son. I've just seen this, like you mentioned it, Graham, to Saudi. I don't see Son doing that.
No.
I just don't. Yeah, you're talking head as well.
Yeah, I saw an interview from Korean television that was subtitle. He said that he's still on a mission for Tottenham.
Yeah. So
Still unfinished business.
I think he's comfortable as well being a bit part next season, whoever the manager is. I think we all know that we're not going to get 90 minutes out of him every week. We're going to see him impact or coming off, which I'm fine with. But yeah, I mean, Graham, I think we're going to do another episode nearer to the actual transfer window, aren't we? On what we need and what we're seeing. So I won't get into it too much. But any concerns by the movements other clubs are making for you, Graham? Or
I just feel like we are, and it's not a thing for this season. Like we've always been relatively slow to act, And we tend to have historically done a lot of our business late in the window. And I honestly think it's because if he does that, he doesn't have to pay the new players their salaries until he signs them at the end of the window. He doesn't pay them to sit at home, you know. So I really think it's as simple as that, that he can't justify spending their salaries over the summer. But this is one of the things I feel like we're almost waiting for all the big teams who will pay the big salaries to hoover up the best players, and then we'll be in for the whatever's left. I just think that
Yeah.
we're not competing for Victor Gyökeres. Would be a really good addition to the squad. Wouldn't be that expensive, relatively speaking. We're never going to compete for him on salary. Osimhen, Victor Osimhen, another one. Yeah, no way we're paying his salary. So I think that's the thing. So we need to find some more nuggets.
We need to tie down. Like we need to tie down Romero, and then there are probably one or two others. Maybe that becomes a priority. And then Anne just come out and said, assuming he's the manager, he wants to add some experience to this team.
Yeah.
With Champions League on the horizon. But as I said, we can get into that in more detail on another episode as far as transfers once we're getting into the window. But before we wrap up, end of season awards. Graham, I'll pivot to you, mate, for yours. We're going to just run through player of the season, young player of the season, and then goal of the season. And I think you've got Thomas, your son, had shared some with you as well.
Yeah, he did as well. So I just did three awards. So player of the season, young player, and goal of the season. So my ones were player of the season was Lucas Bergvall, because I felt in a season where form was all over the place in the squad, especially amongst the senior players, I think he was asked to really step up and be a stalwart in our midfield. And he played 45 matches in his first season. He can never have dreamt in a million years that would have happened this season. Positive on the ball, really great energy running with the ball as well. And he's just 19. So he's really going to be a star for me. I think he was my favourite this season. Thomas voted for Maddison. He's never been one to buy into the negativity around Maddison. Young player of the season, I picked Archie Gray. He's our Swiss Army player. He's literally played in every position. I think he played 5 different positions this season. Yeah, pretty much all along the back four and in midfield as well. Again, another player who never let us down when he was asked to step up. Played 42 matches as well. So between the two teenagers, for me, really filled in a lot of gaps for a period where we really struggled. So both of them very happy with. And then my goal of the season was Suns Olympico. So the goal he scored from a corner against Man U, which was my favourite. I'll go through Thomas's. So for Thomas's young player, he had Bergvall. And then his favourite goal was Maddison's goal against City at the Etihad from the Kulusevski cross. So it was also a very good goal as well. So how about you guys?
I'll start with mine. So player of the season for me was Pedro Porro. I thought he played an absolute ton of football. I think he played the most football out of anyone in the squad. And I think he
man voted. He also is the one that said Johnson again, ole the most.
Yeah. He loved it, didn't he? And I found it funny. Paul Coy, you can actually hear him on the stage say, "Come on, Drake, he's Pedro Porro away from me." Yeah, away from the microphone. So funny. So Pedro Porro for me, I thought he was consistently very, very good. I thought he just always showed up. He epitomised, especially in that Europa League run, what we needed. And he clearly run through a brick wall for Ange. And then my young player was Bergvall. I won't harp on too much more. A lot of what you said, Graham, resonates. I think he's got such a big future. But for me, he was my young player. I've actually gone 2 goals of the season because the first goal I've picked goal of the season was a shit goal, but it's Brennan Johnson in the Europa League final. More for what it represented. And then my second goal, you may have to go back. It's not maybe one you remember, but from a team goal perspective, from back to front, Sarr away to Brentford. If you go and find it, if you don't remember it, it started in the right back position and it touched probably about 7 or 8 players, and then he like slid it under the goalie after he made a run into the box. It was a really, really clever goal. So those were my picks. But Jeremy, maybe over to you, mate. You did your homework, as you said.
A little bit, yeah. But actually, I'm exactly the same as you. I've actually got Pedro Porro for my player of the season. And not just because he was just there all the time, but he just has this positive energy about him constantly. Yeah, and I think he drives us forward. And then I'm going to come back to Porro in a second, but Lucas Bergvall, again, young player of the season, and he's going to be our player of the season for many seasons to come. I'm pretty sure of it. He is just incredible. The talent that kid's got. He made a few mistakes this year, which is normal. You can expect that to grow from, but he shook them off immediately in those games, which really shows composure. I just think he's an unbelievable talent. I love that kid. He's probably my favorite player on the squad these days. But in terms of goals, I'm going to go back to Porro. And I think what he gives us is so much of a different sort of a dimension. And I'm not exactly sure which goal it was, but I think it was in one of the European games where it might have been Hoffenheim or could have been actually Bodo. And there was a move that they were attacking us, and Van der Ven just made such easy work of it at the back, and it shows such class. He just turned the defender inside out, and he passed it back to Vicario, who then put it out over to Porro, and then Porro hit that beautiful long ball over to Maddison, who then tucked it away. And there were two of those goals very similar. Long ball from Porro to Maddison. And for me, those were my two favorite goals of the season, because it was exactly what we should be doing. Composed at the back, bringing it out and looking to attack straight away. And I thought they were great. But I got to throw one more in there. There was a Basuma goal, which was absolutely superb early on in the season.
Collector's piece, that one.
Yeah, it was just every piece of it was pure Ange ball. We were just attacking. We were intent on scoring. And I remember Kulusevski, if you remember in that build-up, his feet were incredible, the way he was moving around. And it came to the edge of the box and he just lashed it in. It was glorious. So I think there was some real quality there, the whole team.
Oh, good stuff. Jan, over to you, mate.
Yeah, I'm going to be a copycat. So for me, I was thinking about it, and even though, I mean, he was ran into the ground for Porro, but like he was always there, and he played so much football. And when it really mattered, he came up with the goods. So yeah, Porro for me. Young player of the season. I'm Swedish, so of course it's going to be Bergvall. I mean, he's, as you've already stated, he's such an enormous talent and so positive when it comes to his football. And I mean, the sky's the limit for that guy. And he's going to be, sadly, in a couple of years, it's probably going to be a Modric move for him.
Yeah.
I think so. Goal of the season, yeah, just for the feeling, the Europa League goal.
Brilliant.
It isn't pretty, but it is what it is. It's fantastic. And I also chip in an extra one. That's the moment of the season was when Maddison hugged Son after the final.
Yeah.
And they were both crying, and that broke me totally. That sort of, fantastic moment.
Yeah, nice touch back to the unity which Ange has clearly created. Well, and it's funny, I talked about it, I think on the last episode we did, Graham, but my mate Chris, who I went and watched the final with 300 or 400 other people, when Sonny came on in the final, Chris was emotional. I was like, we hadn't done anything yet. He's only come. He goes, I know.
And he didn't really do anything, but did come on though.
Yeah,
He came on. So, something I wanted to mention, because we talked about how many games. There was a period in the season where everybody else had been injured except Kulusevski and Pedro Porro. And I think I will go back and find the episode. But Glenn said something along the lines of, those two never get injured. We should find out what it is about them. And almost immediately, both of them got injured.
Yeah.
So, talk about, you manifested some good stuff this season, but not all of it was good.
Yeah, indeed. Well, good stuff, guys. Well, I don't have a great deal else to add. Jan, thank you so much for joining very late. Thank you. All day in Sweden.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I think, Jeremy, you lucked out with the time of day for you. I think it is 4:30 or 3:30 for you. So
Yeah, perfect. I'll do this anytime.
yeah, reasonable time of day for Jeremy. But it's been a good first season of Tottenham home and away. And I'll leave you with this. Season 2 is going to be better than season 1.
There we go. Very, very good.
What are you going to win in season 2, though? What are you going to win?
Indeed. Well, we're on the list as downloading the Iraqi, wasn't it, like the top 5?
We're in the top 10 Iraqi sports podcasts.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, there you go. You always get top 10 in your first season.
Yeah. But that's honestly, some of the locations we've been listened to from is like Turks and Caicos Islands. There's a guy from the States who was there on holiday that I know so he had some interesting ones for sure.
I've really liked to
I look,
and
it's been excellent. I've been really enjoyed this season. This is the 50th episode, so we've done 50 episodes this season, and it's been, considering a lot of the football was really hard to talk about. But
yeah.
actually, it's been good fun, and I've really enjoyed it, and I've really appreciate all the guests that we've had on the whole season. We've had dozens of guests that have made it what it is, and thanks to all of them. And thanks to you again, to you, Glenn. So we talked about
Yes,
stuff, so
pleasure.
thank you. It's been a great
Same as back earlier. But
looking forward to next season.
to our listeners, I bring mainly just the content. Graham does all the heavy lifting of the editing and various other stuff. So no, good stuff. Well, as always from me, come on you Spurs. Over to you, Graham, to close us out, mate.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who's listened in. Please like and subscribe to the podcast to tick all the algorithms so we can get in front of more Tottenham supporters. And to close us out, as Glenn said, come on you Spurs.
You can contact us on email at tottenhamhomeandaway@gmail.com or on Twitter X @TottenhamH&A.
Let me be the one that you turn to, someone you can rely on, closer each day, home and away.